sound all right? Okay. Let's see. So we're gonna start with some games. How's that sound? That sound all right? I'm getting ready to open it in just a second. I was posting a Facebook post also to it, so give me just a second to finish this up. I am hearing myself repeat. I should probably mute the stream. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm fine.
Over there, because I'm now on the mix. So none of that.
You mean mute my sound on the Twitch channel?
Yeah, just I mean, like, just mute the Twitch that doesn't loop back.
Yeah.
I guess I will get started.
Okay.
So
Let me, well, before we get started, like, since we don't have, let's see. Well, we have 2 people, so I was going to send up one more message out to tell them we're getting started.
Okay.
All right.
I watched a video of this game before I got off work, but otherwise I have never heard of this game.
Oh, well, I was going to tell a little bit of history of the developer of it, actually, like if we get a few people in,
okay.
it's interesting. So I know a little bit about the history of this game and also the guy that made it.
I'm a little bit disappointed that it doesn't seem to be about just going through really rough breakups a bunch, but
it doesn't do what?
That it's not about just going through a bunch of really rough breakups.
Oh, getting over it? Yeah, that's funny. That's
like that story's cold.
Although it could be a metaphor for that if you wanted it to be. So
that's not too bad. I'm hoping I might have to put some earbuds in. I won't worry about it.
Okay, everyone. So we're gonna officially get started. So welcome to DJ King Plays Your Hits. Today we're gonna start with a few kind of tough, difficult games, and then we're gonna take your requests. We might not get to your requests tonight, but we'll like kind of keep them in mind for future shows. But if you have a thing that you want to see us play in the future here, just kind of throw it in the general chat. I want to start by thanking our Patreon members. Thank you to our current members, Linda Silva, James King, Dylan Wynn, Dr. Graham Hales, Jim Essex, and Dr. Childers. Thank you guys all for supporting our Patreon. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/PRTC Game Club, all one word. So as you can see here, we're here to play Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, which is a very strange game that kind of gained some popularity last fall. Probably more popular than any other game this guy has created before. It's kind of considered what's considered a masocore game, which is a game that's very difficult. And we're gonna see how we can do in our first attempts at kind of overcoming this game. So James, you said you never played this game before, right?
I didn't know about it until about an hour ago. So
okay, so you never heard about it at all. So it was popular last fall. It became a kind of a Twitch phenomenon a little bit last fall, for a little bit, because it's very difficult, which is notorious and what this guy's games are kind of known for.
Yeah, I played QWOP and
yes. So Bennett Foddy created QWOP, and he created this game about Bull in the China Shop, was another popular one that he did, but popular in a very limited scope. They were like popular among a very small group of people, and they were kind of indie games that were free. I think this is as far as I know, this is the first game the guy got paid for. Like, because he's just been making these little tiny indie games for the last decade that are kind of weird and experimental on the side. But this one kind of took off last fall. But like all of his games, they're kind of designed to kind of master a mechanic and kind of learn how to. The whole game is about learning that mechanic, right? That one mechanic, how to master it. And they tend to be very complicated. So I believe this one is you're using your hammer as kind of a pogo. Right, is the idea behind this game.
I'm trying to kind of see what I can do because I watched a video of first 5 minutes of this, and so
I think you're gonna just fumble around for a while. And I actually, to be honest, I haven't played this game either. It's been on my backlog, and I intended to. But I've watched people play it, and basically you're just gonna kind of pogo yourself. That's it. That's what you want to do, and you're gonna kind of keep doing that. And yeah, you got the basic idea. So it's all about using kind of inertia and physics and kind of trying to find your way around and over things, and it's going to get increasingly difficult. Yeah.
Judging by how this hammer is acting, I get the feeling that physics is in very large quotation marks.
Yeah, of course. It's
the author of that game was Jazuo, a mysterious Czech designer who was known at the time as the father of B games. And B games are rough.
I saw one thing that they did where it was like
designers slap them together very quickly and freely. And they're often too.
I'm gonna try not to talk over the game, but that's probably not gonna happen. So.
They're built more for the joy of
it has
building
subtitles,
than its polished products.
Oh, actually, I forgot there was narration in this game. I'd heard that before, and I totally forgot about it.
That's a deep.
Yeah, I get a feeling where the stream's gonna go tonight. No, so my thing is, this game, looking at it, it very much reminds me of a game I really, really enjoy, just because it kind of breaks. I like critical stuff, like critical reviews and stuff like that. It really, I believe it's called The Beginner's Guide, and it's
of course.
Yeah, if you've heard about, have you heard about it?
Terrible, yeah.
Like it kind of fits that same mark of like it's very hard to separate out a critical review of it from a review of the person of Mr. Foddy, that I can't remember the first name of.
Yeah, Bennett Foddy, yeah.
Bennett. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. It's.
Yeah, I think that the narration kind of adds something to it, to where like kind of what he wanted you to experience was other games, but some people just didn't really get them when they tried things like Co-op or they tried the Bull in the China Shop, and I think the narration maybe like helps communicate, you know, what he's intending, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because that's very much the thing of like Co-op and GURP to a lesser extent very much seem like a thing of like just fodder for the this stupid kind of YouTuber. I mean, I hate to point fingers already, but this stupid kind of YouTuber like puts their like face in big like bright HD in front, that just has like a tiny itsy bitsy little like image or thumbnail sized picture of what's actually like the video's about in it. And it's just like, and then they just yell and scream the entire time, just because that's what gets used.
But I think it's not like a lot of games that are hard in the sense that it is about mastering a mechanic, and I think his games are very.
It's one of those things of like, you know, you take a lot of especially older games where they have one big key thing that like the development team obviously spent most of their time on, and it shows. That's the reason the game is, we'll call it fun. Also the reason why it kind of attracts the kind of people to like, you know, yell and scream at it, because no one's going to be naturally good at something like this.
Right, in a way, I feel like he kind of lucked into it, because you know there's a long history of YouTubers in recent years who became very popular playing games where just voicing frustration or voicing, you know, kind of in my view, overplaying, being scared or frustrated. I think kind of acted a whole lot, but that's become a big thing, and he's been making these kinds of games long before that became like a popular thing. And so in a way, I kind of felt like it was great that he got his due with the kind of games that he was making from those guys, even if I don't necessarily like the way that they kind of approach his stuff. So
I can regardless, I can appreciate someone who knows what their niche is and can be like, I'm going to use that to pay bills. I am absolutely okay with that. Like, I'm not going to say you're a lesser person.
I'm reading the subtitles here. It might take you an hour to get over that tree over there. A lot of people never got past it. It's great. It's very passive aggressive.
That's the thing, though. Is I feel like just looking at the game, kind of playing it, it's one of those simple mechanic things. And I know in my childhood that it was a very big thing that like all of my friends would talk about. Then it just kind of died silently, like a slow, painful death. Not the kind of death of like you die, it's a heart attack, everyone cries, but that death where you're just kind of forgotten. And that's kind of like the Flash games. Like I remember, like, you know, that was a big thing of like, you know, escape the room games and stuff like that. But like just Flash games that do stuff like this, where it's like they'll have one or two things that they're really good at, and they'll just kind of sell out for it. I think that's, if I recall correctly, I believe Co-op was originally Flash based, or it was like some sort of
that's right.
And that's kind of completely died out, and so I guess it's been replaced by this sort of like release style of like.
It looks really surreal and nice though, in a way that like Co-op in his earlier games don't. It's like it has a really nice aesthetic. And it's really
Co-op always had kind of like, especially GURP, is that how you say it? it had a really weird aesthetic that was kind of off-putting in some way. Like it's just
Dylan pointed out we forgot to change the title of the stream, so it says I wonder if we can change that in post. Maybe we can.
I honestly have no idea. I've never used Twitch.
It says Monster Hunter test stream on the screen.
It'll be fine. It is a test stream. This is very much like I did not test this one jump. I did not test the audio before this, so the audio might be completely pants and no one's telling me. But no, the main thing on it is
game in the chat. By the way, those of you that are within the chat, let us know like what your experiences would like. What do you thought of it?
The main thing is for me though is like especially looking at it because I know I saw a few screenshots and I saw a video on this. It very much seems like the I'm calling them like resources, like the assets, like the images that are being used. Very much strike me as the like.
Oh, we've tried that jump like 6 times now.
I know it's killing me.
He wasn't wrong when he told you it took people. And some people never got over that tree. Like so, you're like right in line with the.
Oh,
there we go again.
Yeah, like line up. The main thing is for me though is I mean this kind of game. Honestly, a lot of people get really mad at games like this. Like, for me personally, I don't know if I'm gonna get mad at this game. I might get frustrated.
We'll see if you're still here 20 minutes from now.
My thing is like, there's at no point am I gonna be mad at this game for cheating. I feel like that's a very large part of it because talking like game design and Skinner boxes and stuff like that, you can't just cheat a player and say no, do it again, right? Like you can't be like you couldn't take say what's a good example. Let's say modern shooter number 4. I don't know, like Call of Duty 20, whatever. Not important to the point. You can't take it and say like halfway through have a thing where it's just like a 25% chance you make it through and a 75% chance you just die straight up, and it's like, okay, play the game from the beginning again, but this time with feeling. Like that would probably be on the same sort of level.
Game that does that? You mean like random chance? Like I'm trying to think of a
game
that
like nothing about the player's skill or how the player does.
The only game I can think of that actually does that, what you're describing, is like the old Alex the Kid games for the Sega Master System. Had bosses where like the bosses were literally like rock paper scissors, and if you failed, you had to like redo the whole level. Right, I can't think of anything in modern game design that I would say fits that. I mean, I certainly can think of things that are like, if you don't intuit what we want you to do, right? Repeat it. So
I mean, you're not gonna like on the extreme of it. Obviously, you're not gonna walk into like a modern fighter or shooter. Like you're not gonna walk into Mortal Kombat with the intention of being a pacifist. I mean, you could, and sure, that would be funny. But when all said and done, I don't think you're gonna have a good experience.
This mechanic looks really fun to me. I want to play this now. Like watching what you're doing here. I like the way you can hook it around the obstacles and then swing yourself around. That's really cool.
The main issue is it's got this weird acceleration on it that I think is the reason.
Yeah.
Like,
I think you control that though by how fast you fling it though, right?
So that's what I mean by acceleration. Like because if you move it slowly, it's barely moving at all, and that's fine. But like as soon as you get a little bit faster, it starts going like, and it's like, and I mean that works. I mean that gets stuff done for like being able to like, jump and stuff.
For a lot of the jumps, though, I imagine you probably need that greater momentum.
Right.
So
it would
be way more frustrating if you couldn't get the momentum you need.
I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying it feels weird to get used to because I look at the little circle and my brain immediately goes, "Oh, that's a cursor. That's going to move like you expect it to."
That house now. It was the tree. Now we've backslid. Now we can't go over the house.
You can hit the escape key if you need to change something else. No, I feel all right about it. I'm just not very good at this.
So Dylan is one of the people in our chats, and Dylan wanted us to add an emoticon last week. He asked us to add one about rage quitting. So I'm curious, Dylan, if you're there, if you want to say, like, what game caused you to want to rage quit? What is the hard game that caused you to have that kind of reaction?
Ooh, actually, while he's answering that, I do have one.
Yeah, what's yours?
I'm very much showing my age. RuneScape.
RuneScape? Isn't that that's an MMO, right?
Yeah, it was I believe... God, it's been years. It was a really... I enjoyed it. I have fond memories of it, but it is not good. Most people would not call it fun. It is very much like someone looked at the Skinner box that is something like World of Warcraft, even though I think it came out right around the same time. I'm probably wrong about that, but I'll let people correct me in post, and they'll be like, "Man, you're stupid." It's like, okay.
This is like this thing. Just watching this. This is like the incarnation of Sisyphus. This is like
it
constantly
absolutely
trying to
is.
roll the boulder up the hill, and this poor guy. I can imagine this guy's existential existence being trapped in this pot, and like you're trying.
There's just a small boulder in the pot.
There you go. You can change the sensitivity. So like if you want to make it not as
No.
strong.
It's not the falling down, but the staying down.
You must feel like he's antagonizing you by saying that, though, right? Like, so
Oh, absolutely. It's like, if you think it's the tool and not you being stupid. But no, so RuneScape, it was like the third mandatory quest into it or whatever. It requires you to go find like a particular enemy and kill it, like every MMO ever has done. But when I played it, a combination of like the screen I was playing on and all of this, I had played for like 4 hours trying to get it by like farming these like enemies that I thought were the right ones, and then someone told me they're like, "Oh no, for this quest you got to go over here and kill these ones." And I just looked at that and I just raged. I just put like Alt F4, shut it down. Just no, nope.
Dylan's saying Mortal Kombat 9 for him because people don't have honor. I'm not. What do you mean by honor, Dylan? I'm not sure what you mean by. Like, is it like throws or something like that? They like use something that you consider cheap that's in the game. Because I'm totally the person when I play Mortal Kombat that I will keep sweeping you until you learn how to block low, right? Like, yeah, I have no shame in doing that. Like you learn your lesson and don't keep blocking high.
Right? I mean, you talk about that, but that is completely fair, though. It is very much this thing of like, especially in fighting games. I'm not.
But some people have certain things that are hang-ups. So like if you keep reusing the same move, they'll say you're like cheating or whatever. Like I am totally I will fireball dragon punch trap you until you like make me stop, right? Like you find a way to get out of me. So.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me, especially for stuff like that. Is like it's very much a measure of skill to be able to abuse that. Like if you want to compare it to like say poker, if someone keeps like if they have like this kind of style of hand or something and they bluff this way. And you keep doing that and someone finds out, you can't claim, like, oh, you shouldn't have used that. That's just an advantage, blah, blah, blah. No, like...
I'm curious what Dylan thinks of what he means by honor. Like, what's his lack of honor? Like, that's... I will say that there's a thing like that in what he reminds me of is in the Dark Souls games, which, like, are some of my favorite games. There is kind of like an honor code that people play that by, and I generally try to abide by it since I don't want to play by those rules. Where it's like
don't use your Estus, that sort of stuff.
You're supposed to bow, and when you're in a fight, you're not supposed to use Estus, right? And so like those kind of rules, I generally abide by them if I'm like trying to PvP. But if somebody invades me, it's like all on, right? Like I'll do whatever I have to survive at that point. Like I'm not gonna play by your rules. I'm trying to get through this level. You invaded me, which I like the invasion mechanic in Dark Souls. Some people don't. But if you invade me, it's all game. There's no like honor fighting and invasion, for as far as I'm concerned.
I mean that is a thing though. Is it's very much kind of an emergent behavior thing of nothing in Dark Souls says you should be friendly. It's very much this thing of the community just kind of decided at one point or another that they were tired of people just ganking and running. So
actually, one of the podcasts I listened to, Easy Allies, this past week, they got in an argument about this. 2 of the members, like one of them arguing that like you should always be honorable in that game, and the other saying like, no, that's not what that world is like. That's not what that game is like. There's no reason you should have to like play by these artificial rules. It was an interesting argument they got into about it.
My thing is very much like because when all's said and done, everyone is there to have fun. The people who aren't are I don't know if I should curse in here. But I'm gonna say it. The people who aren't are shit heroes. Let's be fair. If you're playing the game and your enjoyment of the game is to make everyone else's enjoyment bad, we don't want you here. Like,
Dylan says it's the last boss of it. I think the last boss of NK games have always been cheap, right? Because they're always they have abilities you can't do. You can't block things. They just throw you. Like the bosses in
arcade version
are always kind of shit. So I agree with him on that. Like those are the bosses of those games are bad. They don't play by the same rules.
The arcade version of I think Mortal Kombat 2, I believe, the final boss was practically unbeatable. The home version wasn't, but the actual arcade version sold in Japan, what would happen is unless like it was basically like a slot machine, I understand, unless like 1,000 people had lost to it or whatever, it was basically unbeatable. It was technically beatable, but when all is said and done, it just would never happen.
Let's try to make it over this hill.
Right, like.
We're gonna defeat what the guy said very few people do, right? In this one stream,
I got past the stream once, and I fell past it. Like, come on. I really just want to get over that. Come on. Okay. I just need you to go. Thank you. That's the biggest thing is like I just keep getting caught off by how fast the sensitivity gets, how quick. Like,
you can adjust it if you need to pause it.
Yeah. Send some shade. It felt like it got cooler over here.
No. I think actually, so what you're doing is like the equivalent of like when you play Super Mario Brothers and you just hold down the red button and you keep falling in a pit and you refuse to not hold down the red button anymore. That's like what's going on.
like the sensitivity.
I do that all the
I
time.
tested it
That's me
before the
also.
stream starts. The sensitivity feels
Yeah.
all right. It's just I wish I could like turn off the acceleration.
There we go.
Nope.
All right, we're back up to this tree that nobody can get over.
All right. Let's see.
Yeah, Dylan, I think you're right. In general, like fighting games generally have very frequently last bosses that are full of a bunch of garbage that don't abide by the rules the other characters do.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why you mentioned it earlier. Why Dark Souls is such a strong IP right now is because of the fact that basically every like set piece enemy has to abide by the same rules you do. Like if say one of my favorite Souls games, Bloodborne. Say you're playing that, like you go fight one of the hardest bosses. Spoiler alert! If you haven't finished a game that's I think 4 years old now, 3 years old now.
Yeah, I finished Bloodborne.
Right, like, the thing on it is like the Orphan of Kos, the practical final boss.
I was gonna say, I think you want to angle straight up there and then hook around while you're in the air, like on that jump.
The soul would have no rainbow, had the eyes no tears. John Vance Cheney.
The the Orphan of Kos is very
here,
much like
then,
it is fast, it is strong, but it abides by the same rules you do. It has stamina.
Now
almost
is the happiness I had before.
It has almost the exact same stamina, like regeneration stuff, and the best bosses in the Souls games are the bosses that have the same limitations you do. Because like sure, like especially Bloodborne, like fighting like Vicar Amelia for the first time is awesome. You know,
I like the variety. I like this. I think what you're voicing is a popular opinion. Most people like the little like the small human-sized one-on-one fights.
Not even that. Like I mean, the reason why people like it, like. Because when all's said and done, like people don't like it because it's a spectacle. If you wanted a spectacle, you'd probably go pay or if you want a spectacle, you'd probably go watch it on YouTube. Let's be fair, or Twitch. The reason I think people intrinsically like them and why people say they're the best fight is because there's kind of this. I want to say
this is getting really dangerous because if you fall now, it's gonna be a long way down.
Yeah.
So I'm now anxious for you watching this because like it's getting further and further up.
Okay. Oh, god damn it.
It's getting more and more vertical. Where like it's gonna be a really big loss.
Still and quiet.
William
Shakespeare.
But I feel like the reason why is because it feels fair, like intrinsically fair. If you fight a big boss that's just huge, hulking, like just pure fat, right? Like it feels less fair if he just whacks you with his fatness, and that's just it. Like. If you fight something that's small and nimble like you are, and it's kind of a thing of skill and not just like a hulking mass of meat and
we're back
muscle.
at the bottom again.
Yeah, I know. Like because of that, you end up with this very large thing of. I feel like that's a very large reason why games aren't like they used to. Because I hear that say every day. Well, I say every day that I'm hanging out with people that play games, where it's like people talk about. Let's say Mario, like the original Super Mario Brothers. And
I don't know if I agree with that. Actually, I would agree that mainstream games aren't what they used to be, but like there's so many.
There's always going to be a nugget. Yeah, there's always going to be.
There's a ton. There's a ton. If you want a hardcore platformer like Mario, or you want like a game like classic Zelda with lots of like what Dark Souls kind of took over for where the Zelda franchise was, I would say 10 or 15 years ago. Like those games are out there because the market's so big, but I would agree that mainstream games don't have the same kind of perseverance and the same kind of like requirement of community and stuff that old games did. But I wouldn't say that games as a whole.
No, I mean my thing is like looking at that, like say you look at like the original Ninja Gaiden, which is renowned for being one of the hardest.
The arcade game or the NES game?
NES, I believe. Is NES the one that's renowned for being hard?
Yeah, NES is the arcade one is the less popular one. I'm kind of being a bit pedantic, but I like both. The arcade game is the original, and it's like a Dungeons and Dragons. It's like a Double Dragon game.
Yeah.
You walk through a city and you like jump on the street signs and jump kick guys and stuff. It's really neat. But the NES game is nothing like it. It's a platformer.
Like the main thing for me with it is, it's very much, as far as I've ever heard of it, it is renowned for being difficult.
And it took me as a kid. That was a game I lived with for like easily almost a year. like
Right.
where I just would try it. I remember actually I have a very strong memory. I remember my friend Art came over and like we made it further in that game, and we'd been playing that game for like months, and we made it further than we ever made it before. And then he was like, I was like 12 or 13, and he came over. And we had to go to dinner with my parents, and we did not want to stop because we'd made it further. So we like did the trick where we turn off the TV and leave the nest running, so we can like come back to it. Because the game had infinite continues, but like there were no saves or passwords or anything. So you had to, like, if you turned it off, you had to start from the beginning again.
Right, and I figure your parents would.
And he made it in that run. He made it all the way to the last boss. Like that was the first I've ever seen, and both of us felt crestfallen because he was better at the game than I was, and he made the last boss, and he beat the first form, and then there's another form, and when we realized that he had like 2 slots of life left in his life, we kind of became crestfallen. Like we're never going to beat this game, are we? Like it's not going to be a thing that's possible for us. But then the weird thing is Ninja Gaiden 2, when they came out, like I traded a friend a game that I really loved and wanted to replay. I can't remember what I traded him. Like for the summer, because I was like, I want a different game for the summer, so I was trading for the summer. And he gave me a Ninja Gaiden 2, and I can't remember what I traded him for, but I went home and I literally beat that game the first time I played it. It was like it's so much easier than.
Once you're used to that difficulty, it's kind of like.
I think that's what it was. I think it was that I played 1 so much because people talk about 2. They don't say it's necessarily easier. It's weird to me hearing people talk about 2 being hard, and I beat it the first time I played it, and I think it's because I played 1 so much that I'd kind of internalize, the rhythms of that game.
Because that is very much a big part of it. Is like your expectations going in. Like I didn't go into this expecting it to be easy.
When you're building a video game, you're building with.
I did, however, expect to go.
Now this looks like a disaster. What's happening right up here?
I know.
And in the process of playing with them,
okay, I think I might have something.
Until they're like rock. And at that point.
Oh, do you mean the original Hotline Miami, Dylan? Like that. Oh, Ruiner. Okay, not Hotline Miami.
I just want to know, like.
I've not played Ruiner. I played Hotline Miami, the first one anyway. I haven't played the sequel.
The sequel.
But yeah, Hotline Miami is very much like it is this kind of game in the sense that it is a shooter version of Meat Boy, right? Like it's a difficult in that same kind of sense.
It is kind of the opposite though. Like,
this sucks because it's like this is interesting because it's like a slow momentum, right? Where you have to kind of like, it's not like the other ones where you fling yourself. You have to kind of like.
The main thing, like, so I don't know, like I think Hotline Miami is a good example. Like, so with a game like this, it walks in and it says, "Hey, I'm difficult. You're not going to want to beat me." I feel like that's basically what this game's saying. Like, especially considering the media I've seen around it, just like doing a quick Google search or watching a YouTube video of, this is, it's really difficult, it's going to make you rage, blah, 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 blah. I feel like that kind of is the opposite of, like, a game like, say, Dark Souls or Hotline Miami, where it's
I do feel like that's kind of, that in some way has ruined a bit, and this is now, I try not to be a cranky old man, but this is something that kind of bothers me in some ways. The idea that, like, people have an opinion on a game that they've never played because they just, like, read what other people's, like, they watch other people playing it, or they, like...
And so, therefore, they're an expert.
Said, and so then they have a predetermined opinion about it, right? Whereas that wasn't something that I ever... I mean, like, I played a lot of games when I was a kid that, like, now I know were total shit, but I had no idea they were shit at the time, and I just played them because they're games I had, right, to play. So, like...
I don't know how I was just, like, grab onto these.
I think, you had it before. I think you have to, like, you have to use tension about putting the thing on the one side. Like, you had it before, I think, where you want to, like, fling yourself up and then throw the thing on the other side and push yourself against the rock, it seems like, is what you want to do. Like, if you fling yourself straight up in the air, and then you can, like, push it on the other side, you can kind of make a... Kind of like when you were a kid and you would put yourself on the hallway and climb up the hallway. Yeah. Like that thing. Yeah. I don't know if every other kid did that, but I used to do that.
I don't know if everyone... No, you're fine.
Like where you climb up the wall in your hallway?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's what you need to do here.
I'm waiting because I know I'm waiting for like.
You down here and go up and then try to push the thing against the wall. It's probably way easier in my head than it is in reality when you're trying to do it, but that's what it seems like you want to do.
If you want to join the follow-up stream. No, so I don't know, like, to go back on the previous conversation, like, I feel like very much a large part of a game being considered fun is fairness. Like, because if the game walks in and it says "fuck," like it walks in, it slaps you, and it says "fuck you." No one's gonna have fun. It's not gonna be like you're not gonna come back and you're gonna say, "Can I do that again?"
Yeah, I don't. I think about this a lot. I don't know. Maybe I just have a different tolerance, and I don't necessarily agree with what people would say is unfair or fair. Like, because for a while, a lot of game critics about 10 years ago would say, they got to this. There was this attitude that formed where like any game where you had to like learn something about a level, if you couldn't know it going in, right?
Right. If you couldn't coach,
right? But like a lot of classic games that I really love, like Mega Man or like or even Zelda, or whatever, like there are parts where you just have to like learn patterns, right? And you can't know it ahead of time. You have to like learn. And I don't have a problem with that. I think I'm trying to think of like what I would consider it quote unquote unfair, right? Like what does unfair mean?
I mean, to me, unfair.
And I don't know. I don't actually know the answer to that. I don't know what I would say is unfair. There are things where I'm like, I don't want to waste my time, or this isn't worth my time. So I don't know if I would say unfair there, right? I'm not sure what unfair would be.
I think.
Oh wow, you're cruising now.
I think mainly like my issue with fairness is not an issue of like, you know, is it fair? Like say like recently in the news, Battlefront 2, where EA basically got pummeled into oblivion on, you know, people wanted them to get rid of the purchasable DLC that made you stronger in multiplayer. I think intrinsically, yes, that's unfair that someone can pay to get better stuff than you can get by just playing the game. But it's kind of different when like the game, like you kind of have the option.
Oh yeah, I would say like pay for play stuff is unfair. That's a good point.
But like getting into more gray area, one of the things is like this game I feel is fair. It gives you a very, very fairly like tight control system where I can say without certainty.
One thing I think is, I'll give you an example of something now that I think about it. Like one thing I think is unfair is like when some games do this, where at the end of the game, like the last boss or whatever, they'll like totally change up the mechanics where you're doing something totally different than what you're doing the whole rest of the game. Like suddenly it's a fighting game and suddenly the last boss, it's like a Devil May Cry game and suddenly the last boss is like a shooter or something, right? Like what are you doing? Like totally changing the mechanics in the last level of the game, right? Like that kind of nonsense, right? Sometimes I feel is kind of stupid because it didn't prepare you for that.
Or say something like Deus Ex, not Human. Is it Human Revolution? Not the most recent Deus Ex game, but the one that kind of rebooted it.
Oh yeah, you thought that was unfair? I like that.
No, I love the game. I've played it through probably 10 times now. My issue with it is the before the patch, the boss fights, where if I want to play a stealth or a hacking character, the boss fights are practically impossible, save for either cheating or just drudging through it and like carrying 17 grenades to chuck at them for the fight. Because ultimately, that's not fun to me. The game is basically saying, you know, like, we're gonna.
If it expects you to like kind of like squirrel away a bunch of stuff in order to accomplish something, yeah. I don't ever have that kind of problem because when I play games, like I am the person that like never uses items ever, and then I have to like make myself.
Oh, right, but I mean, like especially in a
place
game
where I got to use these.
Especially in a game like Deus Ex, though, where you're so limited on inventory space, especially early on, where it's like you can carry gun, some ammo.
What is going on here? What are you supposed to do with that? You just have a pile of like, what is that nonsense? A pile of dog. It's like it's almost like he's making a commentary on arbitrary borders here, right? It's like doghouse and a wheelbarrow and a.
I am not there.
That's funny.
But I feel like that's kind of a good example of like unfair, where the game says, "Oh well, you chose to play it in this sort of way, so we're gonna make it a lot harder for you." Like, you didn't play it the way we intended, so we're not going to...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I guess I can see that. But although, I don't know. That's an interesting thing. I don't know if I have a problem with an intended way to play. And as long as they've communicated that clearly, that there's a way to play.
Right, but especially, like, talking like Deus Ex, if you look at it and you go...
this could be bad, man. We might want
to... If you look at it and you go... if you say...
Oh, you got out of it.
Yeah. If you go at it and you say, I'm going to do a stealth character, and then the game says halfway through, by the way, stealth characters are basically impossible to do from here on out.
Yeah, I can't think of a game that does that, but you're right. I would agree with that. That would be unfair.
But I think that's kind of a medium. Like, definitely the thing. There are a lot of games nowadays that I've played. I wouldn't say this is one of them. I'd say this game very much, like, you know it's not going to be easy from Jump Street. Like, there is very much little ambiguity between the fact that...
I did not die.
The passive-aggressive, vaguely hostile narrator, basically saying no, you can't do it, without saying yo, you can't do it. It's very much this thing of it wants you to finish it, but it's gonna.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
It's not gonna make it easy for you, I think, is what I'm trying to get at.
I am way more frustrated and nervous about this than you are. You're just kind of whatever.
I'm good at this, bro. I worked in a kitchen for too long, man. I don't get stressed if I can help it.
Can you think of a game that made you rage quit other than you mentioned the MMO? Can you?
Yeah. Recently, I haven't really rage.
Or not rage quit necessarily, because rage quit is kind of like a. I know some people actually do it. It's not something I ever did, but I've certainly had things where I said I'm done and I put this down, right, and I don't want to play this anymore.
Right. I haven't really had like a proper rage quit. That's more of like what I've done. For me, that's kind of one of my things. Is like I haven't properly rage quit a game. I mean, like there's some games that I just don't finish. Like,
yeah.
In the same way, I'm not going to finish a book I don't like. If a game I don't like or doesn't like make like.
Actually, for me, one that came up now that I think of it is the first Pillars of Eternity game. Like I like that game a lot, and people might be mad at you for saying this. Like there's nothing about that game I didn't dislike. It was just I got to a point I had not played a lot of the old Baldur's Gate, Planescape tournament style games.
Yeah.
I wasn't much of a PC gamer at that point. So I played that game, and it allowed me to kind of get by on what probably were some bad habits for a long time. And then I got to a wall where I just I don't know what to do here, and I clearly didn't learn lessons I need to learn to get here, and I just could not get past it. And I kind of I felt overwhelmed, right? Like the game hadn't prepared me for the wall that I reached. Like, I was like, I can't do this. Like I don't know what to do. I don't know what to look at. So I was overwhelmed by stats and by weaknesses and abilities and stuff.
Yeah, and there's kind of this thing of like that's one of definitely the stopping points for me for a lot of games of like I work full time. I have a job, I go to school, and like I have things I have to take care of. So if I'm gonna sit down and play a game, I really don't want to play a game that I'm gonna have to like sit down and be like, okay, I need to go through the wiki and I need to do this and I need to do my taxes so that I know this number. Like when I didn't have a job, I love those kind of games where I could just kind of chill and just do it. But nowadays, I want.
Yeah. I think that's probably it's interesting. I think I have the opposite in kind of similar to what you're saying in the sense that like I don't rage quit quote unquote a game that's like challenging me is like it almost kind of is throwing down a gauntlet while I'm interested, but a game that's like the quote actually I saw Nietzsche on the screen, but I didn't see what the quote said.
So many good sayings.
But what I was gonna say is like the more likely the game that I'm gonna quit is not the game that's challenging, but it's the game that's like just a collectathon, right? It's just like a busy work.
Right.
Like go do these bunch of things, and I'm like, you're not presenting me with anything interesting intellectually or physically challenging or whatever, so I don't want to do this, right? Like, kind of thinking, I guess the kind of game that I'm more likely to not quote unquote rage quit or is not single player stuff, it's multiplayer stuff, because I got to an age where I'm like, no, I don't want to Twitch shoot people anymore, right? It's not. I clearly don't have the ability to be a good Twitch shooter, right? So like, I'm not gonna try to go down the Fortnite hole, right? Because I know that I cannot outshoot people that are like 19. That's not a thing I'm not gonna do anymore. So,
and that's very much the thing for me. Is like sure, I love some like team-based games where I can like pop in like CS:GO or something and like have fun, but honestly, most of the games I like to play...
No, Dylan, we are very much not getting over it. We are, matter of fact, failing at getting over it at all.
Shush. If you want to get over here and play it, Dylan...
We're back where we were 20 minutes ago.
It's like... But yeah, like that's my thing, is like, most of the games I like to play are either games where I can kind of sit down, enjoy a story for, 6 or 8 hours or whatever, and put it down and be like, that was fun. Or games where, like, I can kind of sit there and talk to people and, like, be in, like, Discord or TeamSpeak or something like that, or Skype. Where
I have a problem with that kind of game. Like, I mean, people call them virtual chat rooms, and I like those kind of games, but, like, I mean, I like them because I'm hanging out with friends, but I always wish, even when I'm playing them, they're like, hey, I wish we could play something more interesting and hang out, right? Rather than just, like, be playing this mindless thing where we're, like, doing a thing that doesn't require much of us. And it's rare. I can't think of very many good games that are like good co-op games that also are demanding of the group, right? That's not a very common thing.
For the record, maybe in a later stream, Monaco is really good for that.
Yeah, I like Monaco. Although my problem with Monaco is that it gets, and I played it quite a bit with friends, but it gets to where like it's hard to read, if that makes sense. Like because there's so much stuff going on.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
that
where
you
like your eyes kind of
really
glaze over, and it's like
yeah,
okay,
like 'cause it just it's if it were the same game but just less like Pac-Man looking, like it would be way better in my opinion.
yeah,
I like the concept of it. I like the way it plays and everything.
I kind of got burnt out on it with the whole fiasco of DLC and we want to be Team Fortress 2, but not with Payday 2.
Pyrrhica, do you mean you tried Monaco once? Is that what you're talking about in the chat?
I had played it at one point. I believe it was like free on Steam or like PS4 or something like that.
Oh, Pyrrhica means this game. She means he or she means this. He tried it once but didn't get over it.
Oh, Jesus. No, that's kind of my thing. Is like there are a lot of games that are good for that. I definitely think stealth missions in Payday 2 work really well for just kind of hanging out. Where like
now, are there actually? So I played a lot of Payday 2 in VR. Are there actually stealth missions in that game, or are there just missions that like you get to a certain point and it's always going to turn into Left 4 Dead, right?
Oh no,
like
no, there are always stealth missions. I mean, honestly, my favorite missions in that game are stealth missions. The Diamond is an amazing stealth mission that harkens back to like Indiana Jones style heisting. It's just fun.
Yeah.
So
I know Michael's he's played a ton of Payday.
I probably put like 1,200 hours into it, honestly, which is.
Oh my god, you played holy shit! I didn't know there were people that played that much Payday. That's crazy.
I mean,
I guess the game's been around for a long time and it still has a popular use base, so that makes sense.
I'm not gonna make you go look at my hours in Steam. It's just depressing.
I played the VR version for about maybe 10 or 15 hours, so like.
I'm definitely VR is gonna be a different beast for Payday. I figure because it's gonna be. Because you can't sit down and just like have a lunch playing it. No, it's like you're gonna be sweaty, you're gonna be exhausted, you're not gonna have fun.
It's a lot more physical. You have to literally do squats when you want to duck. Yeah.
Literally do squats. Yeah, that's basically it. But this tunnel, ugh.
It's funny. It just makes me want to play this game now. I want to boot up this game later and try this.
It's not that it's
maybe
bad.
I'll say that until about 20 minutes in when I'm trying to do it, and then I keep failing. But like,
we got about 15 minutes left.
Platformer is one of my favorite genre of game, and it's basically it's like a really complex platformer.
Oh yeah, and I mean I love stuff like I love platforming stuff. Not as much as I used to.
Welcome those of you that are just enjoying the chat. If you have a game that made you rage quit or that you dislike strongly, please let us know in the chat so we can kind of talk about it. This is catharsis.
What he's saying is, let us know in the
place.
chat what games will frustrate me so we can play them next. Yeah. Tell
us the things that make you want to flip chairs.
So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of this thing of like sitting here playing this. I'm a little bit frustrated, obviously, because I've been stuck on this for the last like 10 minutes.
No, you're stuck on a place that you'd already passed 30 minutes ago for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that's not too bad. Like, honestly, like it's.
There you go. There you go.
My thing is
you need
personally.
You got to use those torches.
My thing is with this game. At no point am I feeling like the game is cheating me.
I do think this is the kind of game where like I could not play while I talked. I would have to just be shutting up and so I don't know how streamers do it. This seems like I shut up. I need to concentrate style game.
I like to think I'm doing it all right. At the same time, I'm fairly adept at talking and playing because back before I started school.
You say that, but then you're like you can't get over this one spot for the last 15 minutes.
Well, I did get over it, and then I got really high.
I probably couldn't do it either. So.
And I love how like you didn't even comment on the fact that I was like making badass saves, like falling down, about to like fall into a pit of despair, and it's like no, okay. My thing is, at no point in this game am I feeling like the game's cheating. I never feel like the game is just saying, screw you, do it again. Which I feel like is kind of.
What do when they say a game is cheating? I kind of always wonder, like, do they mean that the game is like just making up new rules as it goes? Is that what people mean?
Well, I don't mean. I don't think like that. I don't think like.
Because I do remember like even when I was a kid growing up, I would think about that. Like my parents playing Pac-Man and I'd be around there like the game cheats. Like, what do you mean the game cheats? Like.
I mean, the game is coded how the game is coded. The game won't change how it's coded. If it does, I'll be weird. Oh, yeah, that's a bad idea.
I will agree with you. One of the things I liked about the Dark Souls games always is that, like, you're right that the basic enemies always play by the same rules, even to the level of detail where, like, if they have a certain kind of sword, they have a certain rule set of that sword, and you get that sword and you have that same rule set, right? That stuff is really cool.
I mean,
or, like,
personally,
whatever armor they have, they play the same like way. That stuff is neat.
like personally, for me especially, like it's kind of this thing of like you can see how fair a game is. Just go look up like a speed run of it, or better yet, a task speed run of it, where it's literally
But I
there
think
are
it's any game, right? Even if a game that other people think are cheap, somebody has played that game enough time to master it, right? And learn
right,
how to play
and
it
if they
the
can
right
master
way.
it, so can you. And I'm not saying that
I
you
would say
have
the
to be
only
able to
thing that
finish.
I would say like RNGs sometimes are cheap, or like a game that has a random element that can be cheap.
Right,
Sometimes,
that's
right?
what I mean. Like
a
say like
roguelike where you get bad rolls sometimes, right? And you just can't overcome that. And some
right,
my god.
yeah.
Oh my god. Start with my own yard worse than new ground. Oh, this is great. The closest
So-
me this year around.
So the stream delay is about
Fantastic. I'm in love with
45
this game.
seconds.
I've never seen this before, but I'm in love with this game.
So my thing is, that's kind of the thing of like, say like Talisman. I feel like the reason Talisman isn't. I'm not gonna say it's a bad game, but I'm gonna say it can very much not be fun.
It is like a couple of steps up from Monopoly. I'm not gonna say it's an amazing board game.
Right. So but it's
yeah.
kind of this thing of like I feel like the reason is because of the D6. Because instead of it being like you have skills and you have this, that, and the other, you could make it to the end and then just botch a couple of rolls and you're dead.
Yeah, I think there are replacements for the center that can alleviate that in some senses. Like
But I mean,
there are things that the expansions do to make that a little bit better. But you're right. I mean, that game always involves some level of randomness, which I don't think necessarily randomness is a bad thing. It's just that's
controllable randomness is good. Randomness out of your control.
Randomness that you can compensate for in some way, or you can learn.
Right, like what it's no one complains in D&D when it's like, okay, you need to roll a D6 and add 4 to it. That's how much damage you do. No one's going to look at that and say, "Oh, I don't like that," because in all
reality, in Talisman, for example, if you go around the outside enough, especially with the expansions, you get some of the cards that let you like skip spaces or let you pick what dice roll you want. Right, like you can get the stuff to let you overcome the randomness. It's kind of hard, and you have to kind of get lucky in some sense of like getting the right cards, but there are some ways of overcoming that.
I feel like part of it as well, and this is very much a cheap comparison because it's, I mean, in game and in board games and in life, it's very difficult to do this, but it's kind of this thing of like, you can't tell me that your family would play Monopoly the same way if it was real money instead of the paper money.
But what does that matter for the idea of the cheapness of it? You're saying that like,
because I feel like, okay, so say you spend money on something to do it. I feel like people are going to look over the fact that there's a cheapness element to it because, oh, well, I spent this much money on this, so therefore it must be at this kind of value, regardless of what actual value or...
Oh, I see what you're saying, is that people overlook the cheapness of Monopoly because there's not real money they're losing.
Right, and so I feel like people would
that makes sense. Like you're right, but like Monopoly is just like if you land on the wrong squares, you're screwed, right? Like that's what makes Monopoly bad.
That and what makes Monopoly bad is once you know how to win the game, you can't play with family anymore.
Also, it goes on forever, and no one wants to play by the time it's done.
Oh no! Like
there's lots of reasons why Monopoly is bad.
I mean, yeah, Monopoly is very much a case study on how not.
I would agree. If our theory of cheapness and versus like hard and respectable difficulty is Monopoly, I think Monopoly is a good example of bad. I would agree.
Yeah,
because of the random.
There is a skill floor and a skill ceiling for Monopoly. Like you can very much.
There's also an element of randomness to it too, about who lands on what property and then who lands on the next time around, and that there's too much randomness to it is the problem.
Right, and especially when you consider the fact that the odds of say getting sent to jail immediately for getting a bunch of doubles in a row are not that high, or not that high, like not that uncommon. And you have people where it's like, oh, I'm on a good streak, and I got sent to jail, so I can't.
So that's our working definition now for like a respectable hard game versus like quote unquote cheap is this game like Monopoly?
Yeah, like ask yourself the question like, what about this is like Monopoly? I feel like that could be a T-shirt. If this feels like Monopoly, looks like Monopoly, seems like Monopoly, it's probably Monopoly. I mean, genuinely, honestly, there are rule sets for Monopoly that make it better. Like
can't think
there's
of
one where you can like pay like $100
I'm trying to think of a
or
game that
something.
I would consider a video game that I would consider cheap, like Monopoly. And I have a hard time thinking about that. Other than that Alex Kidd example I gave earlier on.
I mean, depending on what your examples are, say I brought up earlier, say like Call of Duty, where like big thing explodes because the story says big thing explodes, or better yet, Modern Warfare 2 came out back when I was still playing Call of Duty, and everyone got all up in arms about the no Russian mission because it had like a thing you could skip it, A, and B, it had this thing of basically the game forces you to do a thing, then calls you an asshole for doing the thing. And a lot of games have done that. It's kind of been a really common
James,
occurrence.
I'm trying to woo you into making it past this part now.
Spec Ops: The Line is a fantastic game that I might actually stream at some point if I can find a copy of it.
I like the idea of Spec Ops. I think I don't want to spoil the indie of it, but I feel like that the game is kind of pulls the rug out from underneath you in a way that's kind of cheap because then it goes against what.
Yeah, there are a couple of spots where it does that. The main one, it's about halfway through, and to not spoil it because in all seriousness, it is a really good game that kind of subverts expectations of like, oh, it's just another cheap, modern American shooter where you shoot brown people.
James, I think that a running thing for this stream should be that we try to find a game that breaks you, that you actually like literally get frustrated and want to rage quit.
I don't feel like I've really gotten frustrated at this.
I know you haven't. I got frustrated for you watching you do this, but you seem like you're totally cool with it.
Oh, I love this quote. Of all sad words of tongue.
Eventually you will.
That's actually one of my favorite quotes, and I love that it just came up. Of all sad words of tongue and pen, the saddest of these it might have been. That just kind of fits really well because the stream's about to end. I got about 5 more minutes before I'm gonna close it. So let me see if I can get back to that spot I was at. So the main thing is for me is like halfway through Spec Ops: The Line, it basically, in order to progress the story, you have to do
Oh no!
In order to progress the story, you have to do a thing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Right. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil it for those 2 of you who are watching right now. So
those of you that will never go back to this game that's a 10-year-old first-person shooter that no one remembers or will play.
Right, but just in case. So the thing for me on it is there's very much this thing of it forces you to do a thing to progress the story. There's no way out of it, despite there being choices.
Kiraga said actually they're waiting to play it, so fair enough. Some people have it on their backlog.
So it forces you to do a thing to progress the story. You cannot go further unless you do it.
James is first to watch.
And then it spends the next 20 minutes after basically calling you an asshole for doing it. And don't get me wrong, I understand what they're doing and how that's important to the story.
I mean, we have a word for that, right? That's what ludonarrative dissonance is, right? It's the exact thing you're describing. Like,
ludonarrative dissonance.
Yeah, you never heard the term. That came up earlier with the conversation with Nathan. So ludonarrative dissonance is like it's like when a video game asks you to do something that's different than what the narrative is, or there's like boundaries between the storyline and between the player character's actions. So like a classic example is Grand Theft Auto, right? Like you take any Grand Theft Auto game like 4, for example, and this character has all these like moral quandaries, and they're like worried about it. And then meanwhile you're like driving down the street and running over people, right? In a way that makes no sense at all related to what that game is about, right? Or Monster Hunter is another example that came up today where like technically you're supposed to be trying to preserve the species of monsters, but really your characters are like going and slaying thousands of them to make new cool armor, right? Like it doesn't make any sense in the context of the story because the gameplay doesn't match the narrative, right? Basically, that's what ludonarrative dissonance is when there's a gap between the gameplay and what it says and what the narrative says, which is like most video games have this problem. Like Uncharted is a perfect example, right? Where like Nate in Uncharted is supposed to be this nice guy, but he like literally murders thousands of people over the course of that game, right? And how do you make sense of that character, right? He's like a mass murderer. He's killed thousands of people over the course of that game.
Note, you've got
most video game characters. You take any video game, and they're like all mass murderers. Like in 90% of video games are mass murderers, and yet somehow they're supposed to have like be moral people or be good people, quote unquote. And it doesn't really make sense, right? And that's an example of what ludonarrative dissonance is.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing for me of
But we are far afield from discussing difficulty at this point. I don't remember how that happened, but
that's one of the things. It's kind of reason why I'm not a big fan of the new Tomb Raiders. I love the original Tomb Raiders. They're so much fun. They're quirky. They're weird.
Like the new ones? I don't want to know you anymore because they're awesome.
Okay, no, they're fun. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're good. like to me.
What are you talking about? I love the old ones, but they're bad games, James.
I know I can
They're
love them and they
They're
not be
walk to
good.
this ledge, like hold the L button and walk up this ledge carefully, and then hop back and then run. And it's like just a bunch of
But
tediousness.
that's the thing.
I love those games at the time, but man, like the new games are so much better.
It's not an action. That's the thing though. The original games are puzzle games first and action games second. I feel like
But the action game parts are bad.
yes, that's why they're puzzle
And
games
that series
first.
becomes more about action games as you go on. The later games in that series, like after Tomb Raider 1, pretty much 2 and 3, try to become more like action games, and they're worse and worse and worse.
Ooh, shit. Okay.
But the new ones are good action games, though, Piroga. Like they're like Far Cry. Actually, I would compare the new Tomb Raider to Far Cry in the sense that like they have stealth sections until you mess up the stealth, and then it becomes gunplay. And they're really good at letting you
choose
screw
how you
up
want to
and
play.
not have you can screw up and not have game over, right?
Oh.
Like they're a lot more dynamic. They're like
I'm not saying they're not fun to play. They are really fun to play to me, but they got a couple of issues where it's kind of this thing of.
I would agree the climbing around is like not. It's better than Uncharted because Uncharted is like just hit the X button a bunch and move around. At least Tomb Raider does a little bit of. It has a little bit of timing to it and a little bit of like tension. Not a lot though. And it doesn't have as much tension as the old games did. But the old games it was too tedious. Like those games pacing, it would drive you crazy today.
The main thing for me is with especially with Uncharted, I love the fact that the most fun I've had playing an Uncharted game, I played the one that released with the PS4 was like Uncharted 4.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's the best one in the series. I would agree.
I completely agree, but I also agree that it is way more fun when you turn the aim assist all the way up and just don't play.
Yeah, I agree too. That game is not good because of its mechanics. It's good because of its narrative. I would argue like the mechanics are kind of just like you play it and just you try to play it on easy, basically. I kind of did. That's what I kind of did. I turned up that aim assist for that reason because I thought the gunplay in this game is not interesting or fun. So I want to play it like I want to experience the story and the spectacle of it.
In this context, it's tempting to make friendly content that's gentle.
Whereas I'm totally like I'm a huge like Dark Souls fan and I like hard or challenging games. But that's an example of a game where it didn't feel like the challenge was interesting. It was just like the challenge was just let me hide behind this rock and like pop up, every now and then shoot at things, and that's not a fun way to play that game. It was way more fun where you could like swing from ropes while you're shooting at guys and stuff. You could play way more dynamically if you turned on that aim assist.
All right, so I believe now's a good talking point because we got 2 minutes left, and I just got the farthest I've ever gotten. So I guess.
But no, we gotta see if we can make it further. You have to make it or fall, James. This is when you become a man or a boy.
Oh, really? Really? Are you really gonna make Dylan wait?
You can't end up here because you can't. This game's not enough saving anyway, does it? So you have to make it or fall.
I think it saves.
Okay. All right. Well, James is gonna wimp out on that one, and we're gonna turn the stream over to Dylan now. I might hang up in the chat for a little bit while Dylan plays. Maybe talk to him about some fighting games and what's great. But thank you guys that hung out with us today. Make sure you join our Discord if you're interested in kind of continuing the conversation. And we also have a Patreon, and we have some really cool awards for Patreon members. We're going to have hundreds and hundreds of dollars of games we're going to give away for free on our Patreon. Just $1 to enter, and that also gives you access to our game vault, which has over 20 games currently for free in it.
All right.